Hi there. So it's the last event. I do write novels, but I promise I won't keep you long. I think I have one slide. Yeah, paper. Brought you some paper, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I like podiums. So it's been a fun couple of days here in startup culture with Berlin characteristics. I'm going to talk a bit about fantasy prototypes and real disruption because I like the theme of your event, Here Be Dragons. I'm a science fiction writer, but I'm very into design fiction. And I don't do a lot of design fiction, I just study it. But you did have some design fiction here. You had Superflux and Anab Jain. And certainly Superflux out of London is one of the top 3 organizations in the world, maybe the top organization in the world that does this. I would urge you to go back and look at that speech again. I certainly did. At the time, it was like being hit on the head with 15 hammers. But you need to slow that speech down and see what she was doing and who she was referring to. If you're interested in design fiction, let me just tell you the people you ought to be looking up. This will help you when you leave. Superflux, as I just said, Near Future Laboratory. They're 10 years old now. They've got a pretty good grasp on what they're doing. Arup Foresight Group, they're very into experiential futurism. You'll be hearing more about that kind of thing. And then academics who are doing it out of the design world. Art Center College of Design, Arizona State University and their eMERGE group, and especially the Royal College of Art and their Interaction Design Department, who are really the mavens of critical design and the inspiration behind a lot of this activity in making up things and imagining what they would be as real disruptions. You know, why do people do this kind of thing nowadays? It's pretty simple. It's really about changes in interaction design. It's about work you people have been doing for many years to lower barriers to entry in media production and create a network society. So we've gotten to a world where you don't really have to write science fiction novels about breakthrough technologies. You can get a group of people together, a multidisciplinary group, do a viral video about it, fast, cheap, out of control, release it on the net into a different kind of society where it'll find its own audience and have its own kind of social effect. It's really a method of creating dragons, letting them loose, see if they disrupt anything. Imaginary things that look like real objects. I'll give you a formal definition. It's the deliberate use of diegetic prototypes to suspend disbelief about change. Okay, that's not what science fiction is. Science fiction, very literary. It's a form of fiction. Design fiction is really a form of design. It's a form of design about speculative objects and services. A lot of this going on. You saw some of it here. So, what seems to be going on there? I mean, why is interaction becoming as futuristic it is? Why are events becoming the new magazines? Why do science fiction writers hang out in startup societies? When is it something to watch and when is it something to do? When is it the fantasy prototype and when does it become the real disruption? Well, there are certain times that are ripe for that. You can always do it, but there's only certain times when people are going to listen and maybe take action. And it has everything to do with technology life cycles. And especially has everything to do with current technology life cycles of life under global capitalism. How do these things start? Where do they come from? How do you know they're going to get big and what happens to them then? There's an S-curve there. An S-curve of technological development. Starts from the R&D lab. There's the ascent in the startup world. There's the maturity, and then there's the decline. There's the bleeding edge, there's the leading edge, there's the state of the art, there's the obsolescence. There's the question mark, there's the rising star, there's the cash cow, there's the dead dog. All terms for the same thing. Between every one of those phases is a period of great weakness and uncertainty, of innovation when everything's on the table. And the best times for intervention are between the stages. That's when you can offer people some counsel in their bewilderment. Now, everyone would think that if you're a futurist, you're going to spend all your time out in the lab doing science with scientists, or maybe out in the rising star place with startup people who are trying to turn scientific discoveries into technological breakthroughs. No, when you're really a futurist, you spend a lot of time in bereavement counseling over with the dead dog and the huge length of entropy that's on the other side of that. Because, the length of time does not stop. And there really isn't much you can do about the process of your VC cash out when you're no longer a startup and you're starting to become a big company. And the shareholders are beginning to whisper behind your back about how the founder should be eased out and replaced with somebody a bit more business-like. That's a very good time to go in and start telling people nice stories about dragons. Another great time to tell people nice stories about dragons when they're in a mature technology. They're in a mature market and they realize that they've lost their edge, that disruption is occurring, that they're falling off the edge of the earth, and that they're going to be in the ash heap of techno history. That's also an excellent time to show up and gently break to them the terrible truth. Those who live by disruption die by disruption. If you're involved in that, that's the fate you're going to meet. It's like being a soldier with a sword. You got to expect that battlefield. And design fictions are a part of that. They are part of the startup disruption world. They do not stabilize the situation. They destabilize it. You will never see a design fiction which is about getting married, buying a house, having kids, and living in a stable environment with civil rights. You're never going to hear a design fiction on that topic. Why don't design fiction people do that? Why don't you find that interesting? Why don't we do stuff like that? Why is design fiction always full of wow and amazingness? It's kind of a good question. Well, I'm going to tell you why, and it's going to kind of hurt. In the startup world, you work hard and you move fast in order to make other people rich. Other people, not you. You're a small elite of very smart young people who are working very hard for an even smaller elite of mostly baby boomer financiers. So they can buy national governments, shut the governments down, destroy the middle class and the nation state. That's been going on a long time. It's not something you invented. That's a historical development. There's a lot of reasons that the nation state's got to go. There's a lot of reasons why a middle class is in the way. But that's what you do. And that will be the judgment of history for your startup culture. They're going to say the 20 teens were all about that. It was a tacit allegiance between the hackerspace favelas of the startups and offshored capital and tax avoidance money laundries. And what were they doing? They were building a globalized network society. And that's what's coming next, an actual globalized network society. Now, you're routing around it from the bottom while they climb over from the top, but you're both aimed in the same direction. That's why you're in tacit allegiance, whether you know it or not. And right now, everybody lives the way that people used to live under empires and colonial states. We're all auto-colonialized by the austerity. That's your big dragon. That's your actual dragon. Not like the little tactical dragon, that's the big dragon. And you know it's the big dragon because you're part of it. You're actually its brain and its nervous system. You. And as long as you are making rich guys richer, you are not disrupting the austerity. You are one of its top facilitators. What's the answer to this problem? Pretty simple. Keep more of the money yourself. Keep more of the money yourself, but that's not enough because I've seen that done. And when tech people keep more of the money themselves, they just go and build toy rocket ships. They never actually build a global network society. They don't actually go in and create a civil network. That's not on their agenda. They're too hung up on being cool about it. Now, it's kind of great that you're in allegiance with the austerity because they're super powerful in your own way, so are you. But are they your friends? Are they really allies you can trust? No, they're not. How do you know that? They kicked your ass in the 1990s. They destroyed you in the dot-com boom. They wrecked your dreams. They took everything you built. You have never avenged yourself for that. They're still sitting on your neck. And it was their fault, not yours. They're the ones who panicked and destroyed the backup. It wasn't your technology that caused the dot-com crash. It was them. And then in 2008, they did the same thing again, and now they're doing it again. And have you ever tackled that particular dragon? No, you haven't. So that's a large one. And I kind of warned you that it would be painful, but that's what I hear here. And in fact, that's what I hear in startup culture all over the world. And you share the values of your brothers and sisters in other similar cities. You have a lot in common with them, more than you understand. The best thing you have in common with them is your shared illusions. So I'm not going to kill that dragon for you. That's really your problem. I made a decision a long time ago. I'm into the fantasy prototypes. That's what I do. I write novels. I'm not a political activist. I just know what's going on, okay? And so do you. I prefer the prototype fantasies, the real disruptions. That's what I'm good at. I'm not a business guy. I don't do startups. I'm not running for office. I don't care. That was a conscious decision. What can you do for me? Well, you can actually do some things for me, and you seem like a friendly crowd, so I'm going to ask. All right, I know there are some German design fictions, because you're obviously very creative people, but I'm not hip enough to find them for myself. So I'd appreciate it if you sent me some. I've got this blog for Wired, and I'm always like putting these things up on my blog. I'd be keen to see any speculative kinds of weird videos that this crowd is into. There must be some. Truck them on over. I'd be happy to publicize them. Obviously, you know what you're doing here. You're very well organized. But there's a problem, and the problem is this idea of sort of doing the fantasy prototypes and then moving toward real disruption is actually starting to catch on. People have learned how to do it. It's pretty cheap. 10 of me couldn't handle it. There's just going to be way too much. There's already way too much. What's really needed at this point is some kind of categorization and logical organization for all these techno fantasies. Because they're interesting, but they're interesting in different ways, like a techno fantasy that's done by a clever 19-year-old girl in an art and design school is not in the same category as a Google Glass conceptual video. And you may have noticed that before Google Glass actually brought out the project, they brought out this huge glossy Blade Runner style 5-minute YouTube video of people running around in a fantasy world with a device on that, and then they asked science fiction writers to come up on the stage and put those things on. That's all calculated. It's entirely deliberate. There's nothing accidental about that. It's just, it's a series of maneuvers within contemporary state. It's not even a form of marketing. It's a form of mind share. People are doing that. Everybody's doing it. Not everybody, but the smartest operators are doing it. And what we need is somebody who's hip enough to understand that. We need a taxonomy of dragons. We need somebody to go out, collect them, brand them, categorize them, say which is the good ones and which are the bad ones, put them in corrals. Your group of people, I'm thinking, would be kind of ideal for that. It's suits your skills. You're very well organized group here. Clever, like Berlin, cultural startup with Berlin characteristics. Go out, find these things out, tell the world which are the good ones, which are the bad ones, try and find categories, collect all of them, divvy them up. You're good at that kind of work. I think the world would appreciate that very much. So good luck with your future efforts in business. And I appreciate your hospitality. Berlin's a really fun, dynamic place. I've been having a great time here. So thanks for listening.